Thank you, Senator Cassidy. And Mr. President, I also rise in strong support of this amendment, the Cassidy Amendment, which would increase revenue sharing with states for offshore oil and gas development. You know, Mr. President, revenue sharing is a critical issue that I've advocated with others for many years, certainly including Senator Cassidy, his predecessor, and Committee Chair Murkowski. I'm pleased that our coalition in support of this strong, positive concept has grown in recent years, and it now includes colleagues from the Mid-Atlantic states. I'm particularly pleased that that's evidenced by this amendment being supported and co-authored by the two senators from Virginia and Senator Scott. You know, revenue sharing with oil and gas producing states is, number one, fair to those states that incur real environmental and other costs due to production activity that benefits the nation. And number two, it's good, positive, pro-American energy policy. Now, it's fair because, again, energy-producing states incur costs and impacts from that production, including environmental costs. And those states need to be properly compensated to deal with those real costs and impacts. But secondly, and just as importantly, this is positive, productive policy that furthers a pro-American energy agenda. It encourages the production of American energy. It incents domestic drilling and activity and domestic energy production over the long term. That energy production is essential to job creation and an overall healthy economy. And if it weren't for the oil and gas jobs that accompanied the energy sector boom earlier this decade, we would still be in a technical recession. One point I want to emphasize is that many of those jobs have been created by small firms in the oil and gas services industry and support sectors. These small business jobs are something I've highlighted in my role as chair of the Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship. This amendment before the Senate, the Cassidy Amendment, would increase revenue sharing for Gulf states and it would establish revenue sharing for new production off of Alaska and off of Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. This is a clear gain for those states and those regions, but more importantly, it is a clear gain for the country because in the medium and long term, we will get more American energy production and be more self-sufficient. Now, let me be clear what revenue sharing means for states like my home of Louisiana. In Louisiana, we spend 100% of those revenues on valid environmental work, specifically coastal restoration. You know, we lose a football field of land in Louisiana's coastal area, just in coastal Louisiana, every 38 minutes. Think about that. Close your eyes, picture a football field, losing that amount of Louisiana coastal land every 38 minutes, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, no time off for holidays or weekends. This is our most significant environmental issue by far in Louisiana. And so our state has committed itself to spending all of the money we receive from revenue sharing to restoring and rebuilding and stabilizing our coast. This is vitally important for us. It's also vitally important for the rest of the country because Louisiana supplies so much energy to the rest of the country, so much fisheries and fish and seafood to the rest of the country, and our ports in the midst of that coastal area are so vital to trade and commerce for the rest of the country. So again, what this amendment does is it expands revenue sharing to Alaska and the Mid-Atlantic states. Between 2027 and 2031, those states receive 37.5% of revenue sharing from oil and gas production off of their coasts, which is what Louisiana and the Gulf states receive now. The amendment would also lift the cap on revenue sharing that the Gulf states are burdened with under the GOMESA Act of 2006. Under that law, revenue sharing with Gulf states is capped arbitrarily at $500 million a year. But in those operative years of this amendment, that would be increased to $1 billion a year. Revenue sharing is vital when it comes to both adequately compensating the states that incur costs and impacts. So it's vital for fairness. But again, it's vital to encourage more American energy production and more self-sufficiency. For our nation, not just the states impacted, that means growth, that means energy independence, that is a win, in fact, for our foreign policy, less dependence on unstable and sometimes very unfriendly nations in the Middle East. We want to continue to play a critical role in meeting America's energy needs. We want to do that in Louisiana. Other states want to do that. This amendment and this concept will very much encourage us to do that and continue to forge a path of American energy independence, which is great for economic growth. Mr. President, I want to briefly take a moment to compliment my colleague from Louisiana, Senator Cassidy. He's worked very hard on this issue, this amendment, and other critical energy issues as a member of the Energy Committee, also before that as a member of the House of Representatives. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to work with him on this amendment and this concept. We've been working on the concept and furthering it for some time. So I urge all of my colleagues, Mr. President, to support this common sense, pro-American energy, pro-American jobs amendment. This will move us in the right direction for energy independence, for economic growth, and for a sound foreign policy that decreases our reliance and dependence of any sort on nations in the Middle East. With that, Mr. President, I end and suggest the absence of a quorum.